Hello, everyone, and welcome to Mindshare Partners Expert Interview Series, where we highlight thought leaders in the workplace mental health movement. Today, I'm really excited to speak with Dr. Bruce Y. Lee. He's a professor of health policy and management at the City University of New York Graduate School of Public Health, where he's the founder and executive director of both the Center for Advanced Technology and Communication in Health. Dr. Bruce, alongside his colleagues, recently published a study that estimated the cost of burnout to be between $4,000 and $21,000 per worker per year in the US. With that, hello, Bruce. Nice to have you with us.
Thanks for having me, Bernie.
So tell us more about this study and what it found and how the costs of burnout might differ across different levels.
Well, one of the things that we know, there's been increasing talk of employee burnout, worker burnout, as an increasing problem throughout the country. But it wasn't clear what that was actually costing companies. And we
Mhm.
felt that if companies or employers in general, so when I say companies, that also means other types of organizations, institutions, et cetera, had a better understanding of what it would actually, how it actually affect them financially, economically, then it could help them better understand how big a problem it is and how much to invest in preventing or at least mitigating the problem. So what we did was we developed a computer simulation model that simulated employees as they move through different types of states, potentially, different types of engagement states to disengagement, potentially to burnout, to leaving the job, et cetera, and simulated what might happen over time and how that might affect different aspects of their life, including productivity. Uh,
Mhm.
and we found, as you indicated, that the cost per employee could range from about 4,000 to 21,000 per employee. Um, and that could end up costing a company or an institution or organization millions of dollars, because if you count the number of employees that they have and you look at current burnout rates, that's what uh, might be the case. And if you think about it, that number can far exceed other types of costs.
Mhm.
Certainly, employers have to pay for, health insurance. They have to pay for different types of infrastructure and training and those things like that. And in many cases, if you're losing millions of dollars to burnout, then that's going to really cut into your bottom line. So in most cases, if you're head of an organization, you should turn your head and say, hey, hold on a second, this is affecting our bottom line. We need to do something about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like kind of the general sentiment of if people are happy and healthy, they do better and are be better at work. But this really helps quantify that
Mhm.
the costs of not being well. So you kind of mentioned different states of engagement and burnout. Can you tell us a little bit more about these different states that folks can go through?
Well, we used the Maslow hierarchy of engagement to for this, because what we wanted to do is, we didn't want to reinvent the wheel, but we wanted to look at what's been done in the past in terms of how you classify different people in terms of different stages of burnout. So one state is engaged. So the person is fully engaged, they're active in their work, they're feeling good, and that's really sort of the highest level of productivity. Then there's the disengaged state where they aren't fully engaged. They feel a little kind of separation from their work. They don't feel quite as good, and as a result, their productivity does take a hit. It does drop. A third state is the ineffective state, where they're basically, it's worse than the disengaged state. They're actually seeing their functioning and those things like that take major hits. They aren't really functioning well in their work, and they're not providing the organization what's really needed of them. Then there's the overextended, where they really just feel like they can't keep up. And then finally, there's burnout, and an additional state when they actually leave their job. So we know that not everyone who experiences burnout will necessarily leave their job. They can stay in the burnout stage, or they can stay in any of those states. And
Mhm.
essentially, it's fluid. People can move amongst the states, and we know that people on a given day can feel overextended, on a given day can feel burnt out or what have you. But this is more what's happening over the course of like 2 weeks or
Hmm.
month. in those different types of cycles. So if you're consistently feeling a certain way, you're actually in that state.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like many people can probably empathize with feeling in the not amazing state, but not necessarily a crisis state too. I feel like increasingly we see burnout levels of any kind of plateau or increase over time. So getting a little bit into the action of what do we actually do about it? What would you tell employers who are wanting to meaningfully combat burnout in the workplace?
So one is establish it in your list of priorities. And so it's one thing to say, oh yeah, burnout's a problem. We care about it. But where does it actually rank in terms of your list of priorities? So if it is number like 77 on a list of 100 priorities, what are the chances of it actually being addressed versus something that's near the top? And what our studies show that again, it's affecting your bottom line. If you're a business, you presumably are interested in profit, which is your revenue minus your costs and your expenses. So if this is increasing your costs, it's affecting your profit. And even if you are a nonprofit or some other types of organization, these are things that you have to pay attention to. So
Hmm.
first of all, you look at this and say, okay, given this, how much of a real priority are you going to make it? And in most cases, I would suggest, looking at the numbers that we came up with, it should be really high up there. It should be, one of the top 5 things that you really want to address. And so then that's the first step.
Hmm.
Realizing, acknowledging a problem. We always talk about when it comes to like individual behavior, are you acknowledging that it's a problem? If you have an alcohol problem, are you actually acknowledging, are you actually going to do something about it? Okay,
Hmm.
so that's number one. And then, okay, now that you know the magnitude, now you know what you have to work with. So if you notice something is costing you millions of dollars, then you know in theory that you could invest up to that amount as long as you can recoup that amount. It becomes a no-brainer because you are basically saving money. It's not costing you additional stuff. So say, for instance, something's costing you $5, $10 million a year, and you invest $1 million to eliminate those costs, you're still net positive there. So it's
Hmm.
worthwhile investing. So that gives you a sense of how much you can actually invest and still come out on top, right? So that's the second thing. And then the third thing is, now that you know how much to invest, then you look at what do you have at your disposal. So one thing is to keep in mind, burnout's not, the causes of burnout is not the same everywhere. And one of the things that we
Hmm.
incorporate in our model is, there's 2 general types of stresses. So one are work-related stresses, and
Hmm.
2 are stresses away from work.
Hmm.
Um, if you're an employer, obviously you have a lot more control over what's happening at work, but you do have some control over what's happening at home as well. So for instance, if someone's stressed out by health problems, you provide benefits so that they
Hmm.
feel less stress from that. Or if they're stressed out with childcare and those things like that, benefits are a possibility as well. Or you can give people more time at home and those things like that. But of course, when it comes to work, there's different things. There's things directly related to the work, like there's workload, like how much is the workload affecting? And again, we represented these different types of things in our model. Or there are things like how much do people feel like their voice is being heard? How much do they feel, involved in decision-making power? How much personal power do they have? How much autonomy? Those different types of things. So a next step is to see what are the major stressors and is being done to mitigate those different types of things. And, there are interventions at people's disposal if they're willing to, if an organization is willing to take them on.
Yeah, amazing. And I like that you connect this to, there are a lot of elements to burnout, like trust, as you said, or voice, and those things that can feel very soft and amorphous. And I think what your study does is really help quantify it to allow people to be a lot more tactical and really understand what truly are the payoffs of investing more or less into something that feels soft. So amazing. That concludes our time together. Thank you so much, Dr. Bruce, for sharing your insights. We'll include links to Bruce and his work in the comments or description section below. Thank you all for watching, and thank you, Bruce, for your work and expertise.